check it out yourself. If you see an entity talking about this, most often they're always, they always have a software that is basically where the billing model is that they get compensated based on percentage of spend. So they make more money if you spend more. So just from a psychological standpoint, and I have a technical call example to negate, but where it just gets tricky is, these targets down here, where we have 3 clicks, 2 clicks, 2 clicks, 1 click, 1 click, 1 click. And while certain entities advocate for not negating any, relevant traffic, sure, it's relevant traffic, but the problem is that we have no control over the targets, right? What's going on, everybody? My name is Paul. Welcome back to the channel. And in this video, we're basically talking and debating if you should negate search terms with 0 orders and spend. And I've gotten some, sometimes tends to be a heated debate in the industry. And I've gotten some pushback, or like on LinkedIn sometimes, from certain entities in the market that have basically said that. So this observation here is basically, evaluating your, in quote unquote, wasted ad spend. So this is just tracking the spend that is flowing through search terms, sponsored products, sponsored brand search terms with 0 orders, and is generating no sales. And as you can see here, it's going down for us week over week, and the percentage is obviously going down as well. And this is from one of, my mentors, and your mentors probably too, because credit where credit is due. We're not, so why should you listen to me? Here is one of the recent results that I achieved, or we achieved, right, as a team. I'm just part of a puzzle. PPC is just part of a puzzle of the whole value chain of product development, supply chain management, customer support. So I'm by no means always just like wanting or like intending to proliferate myself. So I'm just a part of the puzzle. But here are some results. So as you can see, in February, this is global, obviously, the total sales have increased significantly compared to February last year. Why we have lowered tacos from 15 to 9%. Okay, so on this channel we give credit where credit is due, and this is a concept that I learned from obviously one of my mentors, who's probably a mentor to you too. This is where I learned the concept, so I can highly recommend for everything related to PPC to check out AdManager. And long story short, there is no right or wrong. Everything has pros and cons, right? You always tend to be pro this, pro that, but it's like the world is not black and white. Like it's all shades of gray. There is pros and cons to everything, and obviously there is pros and cons to this topic as well. So we have to look at it, we don't have to do anything. I'm just recommending that we look at it in a more like nuanced way, because if we just apply first principles thinking, then everything is is connected to first principles. And the first principles of nature are philosophy, then we have mathematics, then on top of that we have physics, which is just applied mathematics, then we have chemistry, which is just applied physics, we have biology, which is just applied biology, then we have neurobiology, and then we have obviously like psychology, which is just like, you could argue that it's applied neurobiology. And just from a psychological standpoint, we have to just find the balance, right, between the poles. So everything are poles in nature. So like saying, oh, we have to negate every search term with 0 orders, and not have any search term with 0 orders and spend, is probably too extreme. But to say like we don't have to negate anything, or like we can leave every search term with 0 orders active, is probably too extreme too, right? The truth is always somewhere in the middle. It's just funny to me, the entities that I've gotten pushback from on LinkedIn, and that are always advocating and playing devil's advocate for not negating any search terms, are the entities that are operating for software providers, SaaS providers. And most often, like, check it out yourself, if you see an entity talking about this, most often they always have a software that is basically where the billing model is that they get compensated based on percentage of spend. So they make more money if you spend more. So from a psychological standpoint, and I have a technical college entry degree, and that's how it's called in Germany, basically associate's degree in psychology, and like I'm not some hobby psychologist on YouTube. While I'm a big believer in learning autodidactically, I've been in like mental asylums and worked with people with personality disorders, and I've been in in a school with children with like mental challenges, let's put it this way. So it's not funny at all. That's why I am competent in talking about psychology, and credible when it comes to talking about psychology. And feel free to request the proof. Like, this is the school, right? A German school. I stay humble, but most psychologists come from Germany or speak German. Carl Jung, Sigmund Freud, obviously, Edward Bernays, which is the grandfather of marketing and marketing psychology. But long story short, just when people like advocate for a certain position from a psychological standpoint, ask yourself, are they maybe financially incentivized to tell you that, position X, Y, and Z is better than the other, right? Because for my example, the emotionally mature position is that there's pros and cons to everything, and the truth is somewhere in the middle. So why should you listen to me? Here is one of the recent results that I achieved, or we achieved, right, as a team. I'm just part of a puzzle. PPC is just part of a puzzle of the whole value chain of product development, supply chain management, customer support. So I'm by no means always just like wanting or like intending to proliferate myself. So I'm just a part of the puzzle. But here are some results. So as you can see, in February, this is global, obviously, the total sales have increased significantly compared to February last year. Why we have lowered tacos from 15 to 9%. Okay, so maybe we have, or I have, a little bit, credibility and believability when talking about certain topics. I'm just saying, right? Like, and feel free to request point of contact. I'm happily forwarding the point of contact, because there's enough liars in the industry who just fake case studies. So I'm always proactively, providing case study examples, but I'm also obviously not sharing. I'm discreet and confidential with the company. So, but I'm happily feel free to request proof. I even encourage you to request proof. But long story short, that's not the topic of this video. The topic of this video is basically that the problem is not that, again, like the truth is somewhere in the middle, but the problem is the following. People advocate that, yeah, you shouldn't negate any search terms with your orders because it's still relevant traffic. And that's a good point. That's absolutely the case, but that's not the problem, right? Where I just I'm skeptical when they're arguing for that and when I think like, hey man, you have a software that is billing with percentage, where they're financially incentivized to tell you, or like they're financially incentivized for you to spend as much as possible, because that's how they get, that's how they get compensated. So that's why I'm manipulative at the end of the day. Maybe, they're just not aware of it, but like most of these entities that are working for software providers with percentage of spend billing models are highly intelligent, right? So, but I'm highly aware, I'm a trained therapist in psychology at the end of the day, like with credential, like with a certification, not a hobby psychologist. So I'm always like fine-tuned to just be skeptical and basically evaluate the intentions, because the point is that they have a point with that it's relevant traffic still, but the point is the following. Go to last 65 days, right, and we go to orders equals 0, then the problem is, yeah, sure, it's relevant traffic, but as you can see, 5K, or like from the 5K, 3K is flowing through spent with 0 orders. So number one here in the last 65 days, 39 clicks, 29 orders, that's probably a good example to negate, right? That's probably definitely a good example to negate. But where it just gets tricky is, these targets down here, where we have 3 clicks, 2 clicks, 2 clicks, 1 click, 1 click, 1 click. And while certain entities advocate for not negating any, relevant traffic, sure, it's relevant traffic, but the problem is that we have no control over the targets, right? It's an auto campaign or broad phrase match campaign, and we don't have any control. So I would just recommend that you negate it. And then if it's relevant, right, it hurts to go through the keyword list, but put it into a manual exact, or like, manual exact match or manual product targeting exact campaign, so that you at least have control. Because like, even if it's relevant, but we only have like 1, 2, 3 clicks in the last 65 days, bro, we have no control. And there's this concept called, there's this torture method or concept, Ling Chi, right? I admire the Chinese, and I've learned a lot from their culture, but it's basically death by 1,000 cuts. And that's the same mental model that we can apply to that concept, because sure, it's relevant traffic, and sure, there's a point for not negating everything, but like if you have a software that is billing me based on percentage of spend, of course you're going to tell me that, right? Because that's how you get compensated from a psychological standpoint. But at the end of the day, it's also death by 1,000 cuts, and yeah. So I would just recommend that, sure, if it's relevant, make sure that the search volume, if it's a keyword, is high, and then I would just recommend put it into a single keyword, because here 1 click, 1 click, 1 click. That's not enough data. That's not a significant empirical data set to execute a logical contingency, right? And where there is no right or wrong is basically when we look at these targets here. Like if an entity says we should not negate a target with $29 of spend and 39 clicks in the last 65 days, I'm definitely questioning your intention, 100%. So that's what I mean. Like there's always the truth is always somewhere in the middle. So yeah, at the end of the day, like we don't want to be too restrictive and negate everything, but we also don't want to be too negligent and to just let it like sling and die by 1,000 cuts, right? The Chinese like torture method was, they didn't kill you, but they cut you 1,000 times and you were bleeding to death. And that's kind of like a good metaphor or analogy to utilize. So yeah, just remember here, find the point of maximum yield, and yeah, and just like avoid both extremes, because like homeostasis and balance can only achieve by balancing both poles. And yeah. So that's the video for today. If you drew value from this video, like, comment, subscribe, share this with another person, because what we share multiplies. And if you share information, you will receive back information. That's the law, second spiritual law of success, according to Deepak Chopra. If you don't believe it, that I respect. But thank you for your time. See you next time. And until then, happy optimizing. Deuces.